In this session, you will hear Zak and I reference a previous session. The session we reference was carried out in private, as it was our first session in a few years, and we needed to catch up. So you are now listening to the first official session of our podcast. On the first day I walked into Zak's therapy room in my hometown of Dublin, Ireland, I was one seriously lost dude. I had no direction and no real knowledge of what I needed from life. Zak told me that he'd help me to find my authentic self, whatever that meant. 3 years later, I had made some serious changes, and Zak even helped me to get sober.
When I first met Stephen, he was a very lost soul, and I wasn't even sure to what degree the platform of therapy could help him. What followed was a journey to which I had the privilege to be part of, as I watched this young man dig deep and disrupt his old behaviours and beliefs. He eventually walked out of my room a changed man, and I believe he did find a more authentic self.
So despite all of my healing and growing, it's not over, because I'm back for more. This is One Man
and his therapist.
Session 1.
How are you today?
I'm pretty good. It's funny, as the day progresses, I always find my mood changes. I guess everyone's like that. But in the morning, I always find myself the morning is my time. I feel like king of the world. I'm kind of in the time of day affects me. So like now it's 5 o'clock here and I feel okay. But in general, I'm good. I'm really good. And I feel like I'm kind of doing a lot of adulting these days. And I feel very kind of in control right now, which is a nice place to feel in, because it's been up and down lately. So right now I feel like a whole new energy about me, actually.
That's great. I'd like to encourage you to maybe utilize the phrase "in charge" rather than "in control." I would. I doubt either of us are in control of very much, but being in charge of yourself, taking charge, as you say, adulting and doing the big boy things. Taking charge is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, and I think we have to take charge of different things at different times. Depending on where you're at in life. But good to hear that's been happening for you. Interesting that you say in the morning, king of the world. In the afternoon, a little bit of a dip, I'm hearing you say. Am I right?
Yeah. And then it goes back. I go back up in the evening again.
Yeah. Would you regard yourself as sort of naturally a night owl, a nocturnal person?
I think in an ideal world, I would stay up all night in some way, because, the way I used to be when I used to drink, I was up all night, and I loved that. I loved that kind of idea, that feeling of the night being mine, and kind of owning the night and everyone else being asleep. I used to really love that.
Owning the night. Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah.
However, now that I'm a functioning human being, or at least more functioning than I used to be, I recognize the power of the morning. But I suppose there's a more, I don't know, like the word irresponsible, but there's a more, I don't know, the artist in me wants to stay up all night and do whatever the hell I want, but the more practical part of me is like, no, it's better to have the morning and so I've kind of flipped as I've got older. Really, I guess it's the truth.
Enjoy both. Own the morning and at times own the night. Be nocturnal and diurnal. Have a bit of both. Don't just sit in one camp. Change it up. Allow yourself, plan and allow yourself a late nighter for creativity or other just enjoyments. Break maybe the association with alcohol and being up till all hours of the morning. Be nice to actually create a new association, a new attachment. Or maybe maybe that's not necessary right now. But I do like the idea of you still enjoying an all nighter in some other healthy way at some point.
Yeah, well, it could be just for me, it would be watching movies or, whatever.
Yeah, indeed.
Or whatever else you can do at nighttime.
How is your journaling this week? What did you bring forth from last session in the journal that you can share today?
Yeah, so I journaled yesterday when I was waiting for a long time in the bank, and to see someone to speak to about doing some adult stuff, and I waited so long that I took my journal out and I started writing. And I'll just read you what I wrote, because it relates to what we spoke about last week and kind of where we said we'd pick up from. So I wrote, I think this week I want to get back to boundaries and people pleasing. I really think that the more I see myself, the more I recognize that I don't know what is right and wrong behavior. And what I mean by that is like in a particular realm of behavior. And then I wrote, I don't know how to be firm and then not regret it, as in not regret being firm. Because I doubt whether I behaved in the right way, and I worry about people not liking me. Or if I am firm, if I do manage to be firm, then I can often be too much. I can be too firm, and then I behave like a complete asshole if I get too firm, and then I know I've crossed a line, and then I'm quick to reply, but then afterwards I also obsess about whether a person might resent me or not, or even not like me after being too firm. So I just can't find the balance, basically. And I genuinely don't know in my head where is the line, and at what point am I going to be, come across as a complete dick and then risk people not liking me, which as a people pleaser is a horrible place to live. So it's actually it's a real thing that, Zach, it really disempowers me, because I've come quite far in life in terms of how I see the world, how I see myself. But this really takes away my power, this element of self-doubt.
Yeah. And I understand you're starting from one end of the spectrum of being the people pleaser. So any improvement, any moving along the scale towards balance can feel like you're just being the asshole, because it's unfamiliar territory for you. So you're going to overshoot, the mark in trying to find that balance. Because your starting point, you're coming from an imbalanced starting point in the first place. That's okay. So lots of clunky, awkward errors and mistakes in the journey towards finding the balance. And without that clunkiness, the balance will not be achieved. So we welcome the clunkiness and we say, thank you for being part of our process. Thank you for helping us get to the balance. So clunky is important, very important. But I hear you. Okay. You're talking about, you talked about boundaries, and boundaries in particular contexts. Can you give me a context where you struggle with the boundary piece, just so we could talk about that in a more focused way?
Yeah, well, I suppose I can give you a real world example of something that happened recently where I this guy who was basically, I brought my car in to be fixed, and this guy I thought didn't give me all of the information that I needed. Basically, I thought it wasn't going to cost me any money for them to take the car apart to investigate what was wrong with it. And then I found out that particular, just doing that was going to cost me a load of money. And he hadn't told me that. And it was only after the fact that they'd taken the car apart that he told me this. And I absolutely flipped. And I was really rude to him on the phone. Now, it turns out that he was in the right. We kind of worked it out. But that's kind of immaterial. The way I behaved in that moment, I wasn't measured. I wasn't, so I went from kind of being really, really nice to this guy to being a complete asshole. And instead of finding a kind of just an ability to just state my case in a mature way. Am I making sense?
Yeah. And how many times in your life have you flipped the lid and went crazy at a mechanic who you thought was trying to pull the wool over your eyes? How many times has that happened?
That's the only time.
Yeah. Okay. That's the only time. All right. So we know that you're picking out very particular examples of very occasional overreactive responses that you give to people. And we know that generally you stay within respectful boundary and that you are a gentleman in your dialogue with people. But you have your moments. And this was one of those moments where you thought you were being hoodwinked or being done. So you defensively, I mean, went for his jugular. It sounds like you presumed his guilt from the outset of the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. I did think he might have been trying to pull the wool over my eyes a bit, and but also I was just angry that I hadn't more that if he wasn't, that he admitted to tell me that I was going to have to pay this serious amount of money. So yeah.
And did you apologize?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very quickly.
And did he accept your apology?
Yeah, well, I think he was a bit shocked initially, and then he was shocked because I heard from someone I know that works there, told me, and he's kind of a quiet, reserved guy. But then I went to the place the following week to pick up the car, and I apologized again after apologizing on WhatsApp already. And he was like, no, it's fine. And then we had a really nice chat, and he was like, what do you do anyway here in Romania? I was like, oh, I do this, blah, blah. And then I was like, and I have a YouTube channel. And he's like, oh, let me see. And then I showed it to him, and then he ended up texting me later saying, I played your sleep stories to my little girl. And, anyway, I ended up like way overcompensating my niceness, to kind of balance it out, like tapping him on the back going, you're a good guy and all this stuff. Like I meant it, but at the same time it was also like to just bring myself back to level in my head, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And after you walked away having done more than was ever asked of you to repair the scenario, you went beyond just an apology and a repeated apology, but you leaned in then with charm and over complimentary remarks, as you just described. Were you then able to walk away or drive away with your car and sort of park it? No pun intended, but just to park it and just to put that issue to rest, or did it hang around for you?
No, actually, I was able to put it to rest.
Good.
However, now talking about it, what I'm recognizing, because this is why it's so good to do therapy and why it's so good to examine oneself. What I'm recognizing from a bit of perspective is that I completely, not only did I disempower myself by the overreactivity, but I disempowered myself by overcompensating afterwards, I guess, as well.
Interesting.
Is
okay.
Is that true to say? I don't know. I'm guessing that I did. I mean, to be honest, it didn't feel like that in the moment, but the fact that behavior, it wasn't even necessarily completely conscious behavior, but it, to really overcompensate the apology. But the fact that I was doing that, it was coming from a place of, I want everything to be okay with this guy. And that in itself, I'm asking you a question now, is that a disempowering thing in itself?
First of all, I hear an empowerment in that scenario when you said, I'm sorry. So that's a very empowering thing to do for yourself, to have the humility to say, I'm sorry. Okay. I only ever wanted my children to grow up being able to say, I'm sorry and thank you. Two basics. Everyone should have that. So there is sprinklings of empowerment in your story, right? But of course you're focusing on the disempowerment. You're focusing on the negative, and understandably so. Do I think there's disempowerment in the overcompensatory behavior of the way you dealt with them? Not particularly, no. What I hear is that that you wrapped up the interaction, your dynamic with this gentleman wrapped up in a very healed and completed way. That the confrontation, that the disagreement was resolved. There was resolve. So that's an achievement. There's an empowerment in that you resolved. I mean, disempowerment suggests that you've lost something of yourself. As you step away from that and drive away from that scenario, that you've left something behind. You've given something away. And the reason I don't think it's disempowering is because I can't identify what it is you've lost. Can you?
No, I suppose in that instance, no. I think you're right. I guess there wasn't, and it's a very good way of. It's a good way of kind of having clarity on whether it was disempowering. I guess no.
And I understand why you suspected you might have. I mean, I get it. And there is other scenarios in your life where I'm sure there has been disempowerment. For example, scenarios where, as a result of the over-the-top need for people pleasing, that you dilute your position when it comes to your view on a topic, your political stance, your ethical or moral view on something, that you end up diluting that opinion down in order just to keep others happy in the dialogue, in the conversation you're having. That sounds disempowering, where part of your identity gets diluted down because you put a higher importance on wanting everyone in the group to be okay. So, and maybe there's scenarios where that's happened to you, but certainly in the one you gave today, I think we agree. No, you did well. You did well. As I suggest the other one, Stephen, I suggested other scenarios where you would dilute down your position in order just to not have conflict with others. Can you relate to that one?
Yes. I suppose like my wife's family would see the world quite differently to me. But I love them all dearly. So I've learned to not engage in political stuff with them because, so I guess there's that with them, but I think that's kind of different because they're family and I guess for me, that's just being smart. Because I don't need to engage in political stuff with family. Family serves the function of love and support in my life. It doesn't serve the function of political debate or wanting to change the world, and actually that's something I've learned a lot living here in Romania, because in Ireland, it astonishes me seeing Ireland from a distance now, because I think Irish people understand it, but when you see it from a distance, just how far Ireland came in the last even 20, 30, 40 years, how amazingly liberal it is, and obviously may not be as liberal as it might appear, but certainly by the votes being cast in certain ways and all the rest, Ireland is an incredibly liberal place compared to the rest of the world, or compared to much of the world. And living here in Romania, which is still a very conservative place, and being kind of more, I suppose, liberal leaning in the way I see the world, and and open-minded, I guess I prefer as a term than liberal, because it's so caught up with different things these days, liberal, but open-minded. I'm open and I'm at ease with most people's choices in the world, as long as they're not doing other people harm, really. And so here there's a lot of, people would be, there would be quite a bit of unconscious, I suppose, homophobia, for example. It would just kind of, that type of thing. And what I've learned is that I'm not going to win any arguments with people about this type of thing. And I've learned to kind of just soften myself within when it comes to all this stuff and know when to engage. Yeah. So there actually, that's interesting that I say this, because now you're making me realize that I have it's kind of contentious stuff, but it's worth bringing up because I have recognized through a lot of thought there's some boundaries, of where I engage and where I don't engage. So that's a good thing.
And I would encourage you, as you're doing already, it would seem, but keep going with, not always defending your position. There's no need to defend one's opinion. We often chase that with words. I think it's important to be able to sit with your view in a quiet way, as you say, without wasting your time trying to change other people's opinions. You know what you know, and sometimes that's more than enough. When it comes to boundaries in your own personal life, you talk about with the in-laws, and you give good example of how you're able to recognize when to keep a boundary, when to just leave well enough alone. Do you find in your marriage, do you find that boundaries between yourself and Rebecca are well established? Are you happy with the type of boundaried relationship you have?
Yeah, could you give me an example of what you mean, just so I can because I'm not, I can't think of specific boundaries within the relationship.
Okay. A healthy boundary would be that you clarify with each other your individual responsibilities in the relationship. That would be one. Another boundary, making sure that you're not just trying to please your partner just so you can feel needed by them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I hear you. So one thing that Rebecca and I are very, very good at is talking. We talk all the time, and she's my best friend, and I think that's really to our strength, in terms of, longevity as a couple. I think the fact that we have such openness when it comes to talking, and most of the time, I would say, really real honesty. At least it's we're as honest as we think. As we really try to be very, very honest. We endeavor for complete honesty.
That's great.
Whether or not we completely achieve it, I could be lying to myself right now. I don't know.
But the fact that you're vocal with each other about the intention for the honesty, that you're already ahead of the rest of the gang on that. That you're already verbalizing with each other things that couples just silently take for granted or just don't address. I mean, the amount of couples that I meet who are not honest with each other, when they feel they're being mistreated by their partner. So when they feel they're being mistreated, they will lie about their feelings. They will pretend they're not experiencing certain feelings, and they won't be honest about that. And it sounds like you two really have put it all out on the table, that that the honesty piece is there, and it's very much something you're awake and aware of. So yeah, that sounds like a strong boundary that's going to serve you both well, I hope, moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a great foundation, and I think it's always been there between us. And actually, what Rebecca brought into my life, Zach, and I said this to her the other day, we were walking through the park. I said, do you know what you have that really I sometimes forget because I'm so used to you. And she's I don't want to paint Rebecca as being some angel, but really, I mean, I have never met anyone who had such a core of goodness within them. And I know her deeply by now. We're together for over 5 years. I can sit here and honestly say she has the most strong core principles of anyone I've ever encountered.
Wow.
And that's what made me attracted to her in the first place, because I needed that at the time in my life when I met Rebecca. As you know, I was very lost. And I needed that solidity, and Rebecca offered that to me. And that has not wavered in all the time we've been together.
But interestingly, I know, well, both of you have changed over the 5 years, I'm sure. But given that that was something you very much needed when you first met and would have served you particularly well in your healing process. Now, 5 years later, as you have moved on to find your own autonomy of strength and your own self-assurance, that strength of character in her must now serve you somewhat differently.
Yeah.
Like you're getting double benefit. I mean, it served you well when you needed it in the healing manner, but now in your strength, it's still serving you well, but differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, there's two sides to that. One is her strength of character can be an absolute pain in the ass, because I can end up being at times like, again, the people pleasing comes in, and I can end up not knowing. This is where a good example of not knowing where the boundaries are with Rebecca, because I can end up not, she might say something or need something or ask of me something of me, and I will not know whether it's right or wrong to say yes or no in that instance. And I can't think of anything specific right now.
Yeah.
But all I know is that there's moments when I doubt whether I am just being subservient to her or whatever else. But equally, because I have grown in my own sense of self and character, I can equally be a complete pain in the ass. But also on the plus side, we're a very strong team. And the two as two characters together, we're kind of formidable as we, I think, move into new chapters in life together. But yeah, we can really grate on each other too, because I don't know if I'm answering what you said.
Oh yeah, I mean, are you able to say no to each other?
Yes, but it's difficult for me sometimes to say no.
But you can. With a bit of a push and a bit of strength behind you, you can say no when you really need to.
Yeah.
Good. Would you feel anxious about her opinion of you? No. Great.
Not. Oh, sorry, I knocked the mic. Not in the sense that. No, because it's too deep what we have to care about a day-to-day changing of opinion.
Yeah. Do you find yourself apologizing for things that you don't really need to?
No, because it's hard enough to say sorry as it is.
Yeah. Okay. And what about, and by the way, we're all in this queue, so take a ticket and join the queue. But what about your need of approval from your partner? Where are you at with that?
Well, I think I want to be loved, I guess. Is that the same thing?
Yeah. Is it?
Approval. I mean, it's kind of, it's so deep. I mean, it's so, but like, I know I have her approval in a general sense. On a day-to-day basis, probably, I don't always have her approval. Do I crave it? I guess probably unconsciously, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, can you give me an example of wanting approval?
Well, I think there's a scale. We can want approval or praise for maybe achieving something significant academically or professionally, right? You want to hear a well done. You want to hear a congratulations, You want to hear a verbalized praise for for big efforts. And then you move it right down the scale, and it can be as trivial as, oh, look, I cleaned down the kitchen. Doesn't it look clean? And you're there looking for your partner to go, oh, well done, and you're looking for this vocalized, pat on the back for the most basic of domestic tasks,
Yeah, no, I want that approval all the time.
You do?
Now that you make it clear, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like I want the approval for, like Rebecca doesn't big me up when I get like lots of, like my YouTube channel does well, or like she does, as in I don't want to mispaint. Like she's very proud of me. I know that, and she and she always talks about me to other people, but like she wouldn't be quick to always say well done.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like she has her own internal calm and quiet self-assurance that she doesn't always have to vocalize these things, maybe as much as you may feel the need to.
Yeah, no, there's definitely more of I think there's more of an insecurity around these little things that I have, for sure.
Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it can be quite tiring to find yourself always needing, the approval for even the small things, because your brain is working away all the time on how to ask for it, how to subtly seek it out, how to drop it into conversation subtly. So it can be a tiring mindset to be, the approval seeking person. Let's put that into the journal for this week.
Yeah.
Put down the approval seeking, and maybe it might be interesting, Stephen, this week to carry an extra awakeness in you around how often you're seeking the approval for the smallest of things right through to the big. Just pay attention to the frequency, how often it's coming up, what category of importance does it land in. You might give me some feedback next week on your observations of the week around that topic. Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Yeah. Good.
And I guess it's all tied in with people pleasing, right?
Oh yeah. Are you ever in fear of being called selfish for putting yourself first?
Yeah, absolutely. But also, in fear of being called selfish, but also I feel selfish a lot inside myself.
Bring me in on that. Help me understand that a bit better, that you feel that inside you. Bring me in on it.
I don't know. I mean, I heard someone say recently, and I get this, and I agree with it. And I suppose it makes a lot of sense. That you can't. And I'm going to misquote it now, but it's something along the lines of, you can't. You have to fill your own basket first before you can feed anyone else. Kind of that kind of vibe, But I feel like I've been doing that for a while now. Do you know what I mean? I've been working on myself for years, and I've been trying to build, a business and build a home, build a family, build a life, and I really care about other people, Zach. And I genuinely do. Like but at the same time, and I do recognize within myself that I am good at being there for, very close family, like my parents and, for my wife and all the rest. I wouldn't take that away from myself. However, maybe I have high standards, but I want to be there for more people, and I want to do more. And I judge myself negatively in the sense that I am, I feel like I'm just all about me a bit. That's all. I guess that's what I mean.
Yeah. I'm delighted that you don't want to give away that warm-heartedness that you have. You sound proud of that, which is great. So that's nice to hear. Look, people who have a history of anxiety or depression or trauma, addiction, tend to, there tends to be real challenges to the self-esteem and the confidence. And there's more of a likelihood of looking for that external validation to fill those potholes inside. But when you do therapy, for example, you're doing that internal work where you learn to self-validate and self-approve. So the low self-worth becomes, a high self-worth, and, self-doubt becomes self-assurance. And so all you talked about, all the work you've done on yourself. To be more accurate, all the work you've done, are doing, and will do on yourself moving forward is what's going to fill in those potholes and bring that sort of self-assurance and self-containment to its fullest over time. And you're on track for hitting that target and achieving that, I think, by the evidence of all the personal development you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's nice to hear. Sorry, this is like tangent, but I just feel like it's so relevant to what you just said. I remember thinking when we kind of wrapped up our first period, I guess, of number of years of therapy together. And I remember, I guess there was still quite a lot of arrogance within me, and more than likely still is, but it was pretty, it's pretty high then, looking back. I thought I was king of the world after getting sober and everything else, which, I'm not taking away from any of that. It was it was and still is, for anyone to get sober is fucking amazing. It's the most important thing I've ever done in my life. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. But I remember thinking, and anyone, I guess, who goes to AA or something, which I have done on and off for years as well, would laugh at the fact that I thought, I was healed. I was done. I was sorted. That's it. Here's the new version of me. Life is beautiful from here on out. And you know what it led to, though, is especially in the last kind of year, and that would have been, probably 3 years since we last worked together. It's led to real stagnation, because you talked about all that work that I've done on myself. The challenge, the loss, the lack of a challenge, the lack of a target, the lack of a daily introspection, a daily, I've kept up the basics, the meditation, stuff like that, but I've really lost track of that real strong self-development, which really got me lit up in the first few years of sobriety. And so what I'm recognizing, my point is, a long way of saying, my point is the work never ends, and God bless that fact, because it's fucking amazing to start to engage again with the idea that yes, there is always something to conquer, and as human beings, that's what we need. Yes, we can stop and look at the mountain, the view as we climb the mountain, but we're going to have to keep walking eventually again.
Yeah. Two things. One, you talk about an arrogance back then. I have some thoughts on that. And secondly, you're speaking of the high intensity of work you did in the earlier stages of recovery, and how the work you do now is so different on yourself. The work on yourself is different. Of course it is. Yeah. You're not firefighting now. When you're in firefighting mode, you're just pulling out all the stops. You're doing everything. You're trying to survive. You're trying to, you're trying to run from that flaming building. You are firefighting, and you fought very hard, and you had to really sort of knuckle down and do everything, extract everything from yourself to achieve what you achieved. And because your sobriety was very hard fought for. very hard. You fought really, really ferociously for your sobriety. And it's, that type of energy, first of all, it can't be sustained. You can't be firefighting your whole life. So the work you do now in yourself, yes, feels different. Your personal development work now is different. It has a more, I suppose, a softer sense to it. Equally as important in its own way, although clearly back then in firefighting, you don't need any more motivation than the circumstance itself, the danger that you're in, to really, really knuckle down and work hard. And you worked very hard. The other point is just about you talked about your arrogance. For what it's worth, my reflections on that at the time, you talk about how you were on a high and maybe even arrogant in your achievements. I never, ever felt that from you. Okay? I never felt the arrogance in the space when we worked together. I felt your enthusiasm. I felt your relief, sometimes even just your shock at your own progress. And sort of like a boyish enthusiasm that you had for the progress you were making. But it never came across as arrogant. And I know what arrogance is. I've sat in front of arrogance many, many times in my work and in my life. And, I'm not without my own scars or misgivings. So I'm sure arrogance is something I've also struggled with in various ways. So, but no, that wasn't what I picked up from you at that time. It was what I just described there. So just for what it's worth, I wasn't getting it from my side of the room.
All right? But that's very, I was going to say nice. It's not nice of you to say it. It's good that you say it because I guess that's just, for some reason, that's a perception that I have of myself, and it's an ongoing thing. So maybe it's something I need to address because I don't know. I guess I have this thing where I think people think that I think I'm better than them.
Well, you just said, maybe it's something I need to address. Maybe we just have.
Yeah. That's really, yes. Yeah.
Maybe that's it. I think it's important in our therapy work that we recognize when in the moment in a conversation, we can have a healing moment. We can, in fact, fix little bits as we go and then just leave them there fixed. When you say, maybe that's something I should work on more or something I should look at or be more aware of. Well, we just did. And something good in this moment has come out of that. So maybe that's enough.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Because there's always a long list of potential other things to look at in one's behavior. So when we get the opportunity to cross something off the list and say, hey, there was a moment that's been dealt with. Let's do that. Let's grab those moments because, we got to keep crossing off items on that list because, the list can grow.
and it's funny because I do coaching sometimes. I coach people like in kind of presenting themselves and acting, in a lot of business people and stuff like that. And I literally gave, there was this really nice guy who I coach regularly, and he was saying to me the other day, and when I'm going to be that version of myself that I really want to be. And I was like, I just stopped him. I was like, hey man, listen, who you are right now is just fine. And if you manage to work on yourself to get it to where some idealized version of yourself, that person's going to be fine too. But right now, just sit in acceptance of what is now and who you are now. Because I can tell you sitting here, you're great right now. So what I'm saying is I need to listen to my own advice sometimes.
Yeah. But, physician heal thyself. So yeah, you dished it out nicely, and you gave him that warm heart remark, which is great. And I hope he absorbed it. But let me say, when it comes to for yourself, and it comes to your self-acceptance. I think the word acceptance is very challenging. I think in fact, I find it's sometimes too difficult to navigate. I don't particularly like it as a word, acceptance. I can cope with the idea of allowance. So can you just allow yourself to be? Just allow it, and allow it for it already is. And just allowance is maybe a little bit more digestible than acceptance. Acceptance conjures up this idea of having to box off and heal and fix every element of that struggle before you can hit that point of acceptance. And really, we humans don't do that very well. But maybe allowance. Right now, I can allow myself to be all that I am in this moment. Just allow it, and all the incompleteness that goes with that. All the incompleteness. And in fact, where I'm at in this very moment, right now, is the best position to be in for further healing and growth.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I'm going to bring session to an end on that note. Okay?
Great.
Sit with that. And some gentle journaling. And thank you for your time today. How was session for you?
Very good, Zach. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I feel like I'm really settling into now just being back in therapy with you. And I'm just, it's just great to start to see that, to see myself again in a different way, and to understand, and like I said earlier, just to really start to see that there's a beautiful work to be done, and I'm really relishing it.
Great. There's a great word, to relish. Love it.
Yeah.
You be good. Take care. I'll talk to you next week.
Disclaimer. The opinions expressed by our presenters are entirely their own. We believe in fostering an environment that values intellectual diversity, enabling our presenters to share their unique insights and viewpoints. It is crucial for our audience to recognize that the opinions articulated during the course of this program are those of the individual presenters and do not reflect or represent any other individuals, agencies, or organizations. If you wish to contact Zach Powers, please go to www.bergenpsychological.com. If you wish to contact Stephen, please go to www.stephendaltonvo.com.